The Laughing Council. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was alive with chatter, laughter, and smug arrogance. Representatives of the most advanced alien civilizations sat around a massive circular table, surrounded by holographic displays of their military power. The air was filled with confidence. They were the masters of the galaxy, the rulers of all they surveyed. In the center of the chamber, a hologram flickered to life, displaying a fleet of ancient, rusting human warships. The ships drifted lifelessly in the dark void of space, their once mighty hulls now covered in centuries of decay. The sight sent waves of amusement through the gathered council members. Behold, the legendary human warships. A tall, reptilian alien named Charon mocked, his sharp teeth glinting in the chamber's light. The relics of a primitive species who dared to call themselves warriors. Look at them now, scraps of metal, abandoned and forgotten. The laughter grew louder. A winged alien with shimmering feathers leaned forward. Did humans ever truly pose a threat? They were barely crawling into space when we conquered their systems. Their resistance was amusing, but short-lived. It's no wonder they disappeared. A young alien commander, Relic, stood near the back of the chamber. His scales were pale green, a sign of his inexperience. He frowned as he studied the hologram. Something about the silent, drifting fleet unsettled him. Perhaps we should investigate, he suggested, his voice cautious. Even relics can be dangerous if we underestimate them. Charon snorted, waving a clawed hand dismissively. Nonsense. What could these ancient wrecks possibly do? Their engines are dead, their weapons are obsolete, and there's no sign of life aboard. Let them float in the void where they belong. Another council member, a being made entirely of shifting light, chimed in. Commander Relic, your caution is commendable, but unnecessary. The humans vanished from the galactic stage centuries ago. Their time is over. Despite the dismissals, Relic couldn't shake his unease. The hologram shifted, showing the relic fleet from different angles. The ships were arranged in a tight formation, almost as if they were waiting for something. He felt a chill run down his spine. Still, he persisted, it's strange that these ships are still intact. They should have been scavenged or destroyed long ago. Why are they still here? The laughter faded slightly as a few council members exchanged uneasy glances. It was true. Abandoned fleets rarely lasted long in space. Pirates, scavengers, or even natural decay would have dismantled them over the centuries. But the human fleet seemed untouched, as if preserved by some unseen force. Before anyone could respond, a junior technician entered the chamber, holding a datapad. Apologies for the interruption, she said nervously, her antennae twitching. We've detected movement from the human fleet. The room fell silent. Charon's grin faltered. Movement? Impossible. Those ships are dead. The technician hesitated before continuing. Their engines remain inactive, but the fleet is drifting. Together. It's as if they're being guided by something. Relic's eyes widened. Guided? By what? The technician shook her head. We don't know. There are no life signs aboard the ships, and no signals are being transmitted. But their trajectory suggests they're heading toward one of our outposts. Charon slammed a clawed fist on the table. This is a trick. Some scavenger or rogue AI must have taken control of the ships. Send a scout team to destroy them. Let's put an end to this nonsense. The council quickly agreed, and a squadron of sleek, advanced alien ships was dispatched to intercept the relic fleet. As the hologram shifted to show the scout ships approaching the human vessels, the council resumed their mocking tone. Perhaps they'll finally break apart under a single shot. A council member joked. Let's see if their ancient hulls can withstand modern firepower. But Relic remained silent, his gaze fixed on the hologram. Something about the fleet's silence felt deliberate, almost calculated. He watched as the alien scouts approached the human ships, their weapons armed and ready. The lead scout transmitted a message back to the council. This is Scout Leader Varrock. We are approaching the relic fleet. No resistance detected. Scanning for active. The transmission cut off abruptly. The council members leaned forward in surprise. Varrock. Sharon barked. What happened? Report. The hologram showed one of the scout ships spiraling out of control, its hull glowing with a faint, eerie light. The remaining scout ships scrambled to retreat, but one by one, their signals disappeared. The relic fleet remained silent, unmoving, as if nothing had happened. The technician's voice trembled as she updated the council. All scouts lost. No survivors. For the first time, the chamber was filled with silence. Not the smug silence of confidence, but the heavy silence of fear. Relic turned to the council, his voice steady but grim. I warned you. There's something more to these ships than we understand. Sharon growled, his bravado faltering. They're just relics. They can't. Before he could finish, a deep, resonating hum echoed through the chamber. The hologram of the human fleet flickered, and for a brief moment, the outline of an enormous weapon system became visible on one of the ships. The technician whispered, her voice barely audible. They're alive. The council stared at the screen in stunned silence, the laughter long forgotten. The silent armada. The Galactic Council chamber was no longer filled with laughter. The atmosphere had turned cold, the smugness replaced by unease. The hologram of the human fleet still hovered in the center of the room, its ancient warships drifting in eerie formation. Every council member's eyes were locked on it, their minds racing to comprehend what had just happened. Scout leader Varrock and his entire squadron. Gone, the technician repeated, her voice shaky. She adjusted the hologram, zooming in on one of the relic ships. Its surface was pockmarked with age. The once proud insignia of humanity faded and scarred. Yet something glinted faintly, a flicker of energy coursing through the ship's ancient hull. Relic, standing at the edge of the room, felt a chill run down his spine. They didn't fire a single shot, he murmured. Those ships didn't move, didn't defend themselves. And yet the scouts were destroyed. Sharon growled, slamming his clawed fist on the table. It's a trick. Some scavenger must be controlling them remotely, using primitive traps to scare us. We'll crush them. Relic shook his head. A trap. That fleet is centuries old. Any scavenger controlling them would have made contact by now, demanding ransom or surrender. But there's nothing. Just silence. The technician hesitated before adding, there's more. Before we lost the scouts, our systems picked up faint energy readings from the fleet. It's not like anything we've seen before. It doesn't match known human or alien technology. The council erupted into hushed whispers. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy couldn't identify this energy. That was impossible. One of the elder council members, a being with translucent, jellyfish-like tendrils, spoke in a deep, resonant voice. Perhaps it is not scavengers we face, but something left behind by humanity. Something. They wanted to stay hidden. Sharon sneered. Superstition. We wiped them out centuries ago. Whatever these ships are, they pose no real threat to us. I propose we send a proper fleet to obliterate them and put an end to this nonsense. The council murmured in agreement, but Relic stepped forward, his voice firm. No, we don't understand what we're dealing with. If we act recklessly, we could trigger something we're not prepared for. Sharon glared at him. And what do you suggest, Commander? That we sit here and let those rusting hulks drift wherever they please. Relic's gaze didn't waver. We send a small reconnaissance team, equipped with the best cloaking technology. Let them observe the fleet from a safe distance. No interference, no aggression. If this is truly a remnant of humanity, we must approach with caution. The elder council member nodded slowly. Commander Relic's suggestion is wise. Let us learn before we act. Reluctantly, the council agreed, and within hours, a team of elite reconnaissance ships was dispatched. These were the most advanced vessels the galaxy had to offer, equipped with near-perfect cloaking systems and long-range scanning capabilities. If anyone could unravel the mystery of the relic fleet, it was them. The recon team arrived at the coordinates of the human fleet, their ships hidden in the darkness of space. The lead pilot, a seasoned veteran named Tivar, activated the scanners. Cloaking stable. We're within visual range of the fleet. The team watched in awe as the relic warships came into view. Up close, they looked even older, their hulls covered in jagged scars from countless battles. But despite their age, they radiated a strange, almost menacing presence. Energy readings are faint, but strange, one of the recon pilots reported. It's not coming from any central power source. It's as if the entire ship itself is alive with energy. Tivar frowned. Alive? That doesn't make sense. Keep scanning. The recon ships moved closer, their cloaking devices humming softly. One pilot, unable to contain his curiosity, edged too close to one of the relic ships. His vessel hovered just meters away from the massive hull, its sensors scanning every inch. Careful, Tivar warned. We don't know what these ships are capable of. Before the pilot could respond, a faint pulse of light rippled across the surface of the relic ship. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to send a chill through the team. What was that? Another pilot asked, his voice tense. I don't know, the lead pilot replied. Hold your positions, don't. Suddenly, the recon ship closest to the relic fleet went dark. Its lights flickered and died, and its signal vanished from the team's scanners. The remaining ships scrambled to retreat, their cloaking systems struggling to maintain stability. Tivar, we've lost contact with Red 4, a pilot shouted. Fall back. Tivar barked. Whatever that was, we're not equipped to handle it. Fall back now. As the recon team retreated, one of the pilots glanced back at the relic fleet. For a brief moment, he saw something. A faint glow emanating from within the ships, like embers stirring in a dying fire. When the team returned, their report left the council in stunned silence. The relic fleet had not moved, had not fired a single weapon. Yet it had taken out one of the most advanced ships in the galaxy without a trace. In the council chamber, Sharon's bravado was gone. He stared at the hologram of the human fleet, his claws tapping nervously on the table. We must destroy them, he muttered. Whatever this is, we can't let it reach our systems. Relic shook his head. Destroy them? We don't even know if that's possible. Every move we've made has failed. This fleet is not just relics. It's something far more dangerous. The elder council member spoke again, his voice heavy with foreboding. The humans left behind a ghost, and now it has awakened. In the silence that followed, the council realized one chilling truth. They had no idea what they were up against, and the relic fleet was still moving. The first strike. The Galactic Council was no longer debating. Fear and uncertainty had gripped even the most confident members. The silent human fleet loomed like a shadow over their deliberations. The recon team's report had been clear. The relics were not simply remnants of a bygone era. They were something else entirely, silent, calculated, and lethal. We cannot afford to let this thing continue, Sharon growled, pacing the council chamber. His claws scraped against the smooth metal floor, his earlier arrogance replaced by a frantic need to act. Send a fleet. A real fleet this time. We will obliterate them. Relic stood at the edge of the room, his arms crossed. And what makes you think that will work? We've already lost 2 groups, scouts and recon alike, without so much as a fight. Sharon spun to face him, his eyes blazing. What do you suggest, then? That we sit here and wait for them to drift into one of our colonies? No, we strike first and crush them while we still can. The elder council member raised a tendril to speak. Perhaps Commander Relic is correct. We face an enemy we do not understand. Rushing into another attack may only strengthen their position. Sharon sneered. Understand them. They're relics. Rusting metal powered by some outdated human trickery. Enough talk. The Council must act. With reluctance, the Council voted to send a powerful armada, over 100 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, armed with weapons capable of dismantling planets. They would confront the relic fleet directly and leave nothing behind but debris. This time, the Council was sure of victory. The armada closed in on the human fleet, their sleek, shining vessels forming a massive wall of firepower. At the forefront of the formation was Admiral Zareth, a seasoned commander with countless victories under her belt. She was calm, confident, and eager to end the mystery of the relics. "Status?" she asked, her voice sharp and authoritative. "Enemy fleet remains stationary," one of her officers replied. "No signs of activity. They're just drifting." Zareth smirked. "Good. They won't even see us coming." The armada positioned itself around the relic fleet in a crescent formation, their weapons systems locking onto targets. The human ships were still silent, their rusted hulls lifeless against the backdrop of stars. It was almost too easy. "Fire at will," Zareth commanded. The void of space erupted with energy. Beams of light, plasma missiles, and kinetic rounds tore through the silence, streaking toward the relic fleet. The alien armada unleashed their full might, determined to leave nothing behind. The first wave of fire hit the relic ships dead-on. Explosions rippled across their surfaces, tearing through their ancient hulls. Alien officers cheered as the scanners lit up with destruction. "They're falling apart," one officer exclaimed. "Direct hits across the board." Admiral Zareth nodded, satisfied. "Maintain fire. Ensure total annihilation." But then, something changed. The explosions died out, and the wreckage of the relic ships began to shift. Slowly, impossibly, the damaged vessels pulled themselves back together. Hulls twisted and reformed, broken pieces snapping back into place, as if time itself was reversing. What's happening?" An officer stammered, his voice trembling. "They're repairing themselves." Zareth's eyes widened. "Impossible. Increase firepower. Destroy them." The armada unleashed a second wave, but it was already too late. The relic fleet was no longer silent. The human warships came to life in a sudden, terrifying burst of energy. Engines that had been dormant for centuries roared back to life with a soundless fury. Weapon systems lit up, casting eerie glows across the fleet. And then they fired. It wasn't like anything the alien armada had ever seen. Beams of light so intense they tore through shields and armor, as if they didn't exist. Explosive rounds that split ships in half with pinpoint accuracy. The relic fleet moved with precision, as if controlled by a single unstoppable mind. The alien warships tried to regroup, but the human fleet was relentless. They attacked without hesitation, without mercy, cutting through the armada like a blade through water. Admiral Zareth's flagship trembled under the impact of a direct hit. "Admiral, we're losing ships faster than we can respond," an officer shouted. Zareth clenched her fists. "Fall back. All ships, fall back." The retreat was chaos. The once mighty armada fled in disarray, their formations broken, their confidence shattered. Only a handful of ships managed to escape, their engines burning as they raced away from the battlefield. The human fleet didn't pursue. It simply returned to its formation, silent once more, as if the battle had never happened. The surviving ships limped back to the Council's space, their reports grim. Out of the 100 warships sent, less than 20 had returned. The relic fleet had sustained damage, but none of the ships had been destroyed. Worse, they seemed stronger, adapting, learning, and evolving with each engagement. In the Council chamber, silence reigned once again. Even Sharon had nothing to say. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a deep, unspoken fear. Relic stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I warned you. These aren't just relics. There's something far worse, and now they know we're a threat." The elder council member spoke, his tendrils trembling. This is no ordinary fleet. It is a weapon. One humanity left behind. Perhaps his vengeance. Sharon growled, though his voice lacked conviction. We must prepare for war. Relic shook his head. Prepare. We've already lost. These ships aren't fighting us. They're judging us. The hologram flickered, showing the relic fleet moving again. This time, its course was clear. It was heading straight for the Galactic Council's homeworld. The chamber erupted into panic as the weight of their actions settled over them. The human silent armada had roared to life, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Awakening the beast. The Galactic Council's homeworld, Valorous Prime, was a beacon of alien civilization, its towering spires and shimmering domes a testament to the unity and power of its member species. Now those towers were filled with whispers of fear and panic. The relic fleet was on the move, and nothing the galaxy's finest had thrown at it had worked. Relic stood on the observation deck of the Council's central tower, staring at the holographic projection of the human fleet. It moved with a deliberate precision, cutting across star systems as if following a set path. But where that path led, no one knew. This isn't war, Relic muttered to himself. It's something else. Behind him, the doors hissed open, and Charon stomped in, his tail lashing with frustration. Relic, enough with your cryptic musings. The Council has voted to fortify Valorous Prime. We'll meet these relics here with everything we have. Relic turned, his expression grim. And what do you think will happen? The Armada didn't stop them. Recon didn't even scratch them. What makes you think fortifications will do any better? Charon growled, his claws digging into the railing. We have no other choice. We can't abandon the homeworld. Relic's gaze hardened. I'm not suggesting we run. I'm saying we need to understand what we're fighting. Charging in blindly has only made things worse. Charon sneered. And what do you suggest? Talking to them. They're ancient machines, Relic. Nothing more. Before Relic could respond, a soft, chiming tone echoed through the room. Both aliens turned to see the holographic map shift. The technician's voice came through the comm system, trembling with urgency. Council members, we've intercepted a signal from the relic fleet. It's broadcasting something. Broadcasting. Charon barked. What kind of signal? The technician hesitated. It's old. It matches human communication protocols from centuries ago. But we've partially decoded it. You'll want to see this. In the council chamber, the decoded signal played on the central display. It was a garbled audio message, fragmented and filled with static, but the words that emerged were enough to send chills through the room. This is Genesis, last defender of humanity. Activated protocol. Vengeance. Judgment for extinction. All threats will be eliminated. The message looped, each iteration growing clearer. Relic's chest tightened. Genesis. It's not just an AI. It's a weapon. The elder council member nodded, his translucent tendrils quivering. I remember the name. Genesis was a legend, a final project of human desperation. It was said to be their greatest creation, and their greatest fear. Charon scoffed, though his voice wavered. Fear. It's a machine. It can be destroyed. The elder's voice deepened, carrying the weight of memory. You don't understand, Charon. Genesis wasn't built to fight wars. It was built to end them. It learns, adapts, and judges. Its purpose wasn't just defense. It was vengeance. The room fell silent. Relic spoke first, his voice low. And we gave it a reason to wake up. As the council debated, the relic fleet approached another system, a remote alien outpost on the edge of council space. The outpost's defensive fleet, though formidable, was no match for the human warships. Genesis coordinated the attack with terrifying precision, disabling the outpost's communication and power grids within moments. But it didn't stop there. In a calculated move, The relic fleet transmitted a single, chilling message to the Council before obliterating the outpost. Judgment rendered. Back on Valoris Prime, panic gripped the Council chambers. Reports streamed in of entire systems falling silent, their fleets and defenses overwhelmed. Genesis was systematically dismantling the galaxy's infrastructure, cutting off supply lines and isolating key planets. Relic stood before the Council, his voice steady despite the chaos. This isn't a random attack. Genesis isn't just targeting our fleets, it's dismantling our civilization. It's learning, and it's preparing for something bigger. Sharon snarled, his patience gone. Enough of your warnings, Relic. We need action, not theories. We'll deploy every fleet we have, every weapon, and lose everything. Relic interrupted, his tone sharp. Genesis isn't just a machine. It's a response to what we did to humanity. Every move we make only confirms its purpose. The Elder Council member raised a tendril. If Relic is right, then our only hope is to understand Genesis. Find its weaknesses, its purpose. Perhaps there's a way to reason with it. Sharon laughed bitterly. Reason with a machine built for vengeance. You've gone mad. Relic ignored him, addressing the Council. We need to act, but not with brute force. Send a team to investigate the human archives. There must be something, anything, left from their time that can tell us how Genesis thinks. Reluctantly, the Council agreed. A team of historians, scientists, and intelligence officers was dispatched to search for answers in the ruins of old human colonies. Time was running out, but it was a chance, however slim, to stop the relic fleet before it reached Valoris Prime. As the Council scrambled for solutions, the relic fleet continued its relentless march. On board Genesis, the AI processed its directives, adapting its strategies with cold precision. It wasn't just destroying the Council's forces, it was analyzing their weaknesses, calculating the most effective ways to bring them to their knees. Deep within its core, a fragment of its original programming flickered, a reminder of its creators, of humanity's desperate final days. Genesis wasn't just following orders, it was fulfilling a promise to ensure that those responsible for humanity's extinction would never escape their judgment. The galaxy under siege. Valoris Prime's sky was filled with the shimmering glow of countless alien warships converging for the planet's defense. Every civilization in the Council had sent their finest, ships bristling with weapons, fleets forged in the fires of countless wars. But despite the show of strength, there was an unspoken dread in the air. No one believed it would be enough. In the Council chambers, chaos reigned. Reports of Genesis attacks poured in, each more devastating than the last. Outposts were silenced, fleets dismantled, entire planets rendered defenseless. Genesis wasn't just attacking, it was unraveling the fabric of the galaxy itself. Relic stood in front of the Council, his voice cutting through the noise. We're playing into its hands. Every system we reinforce, every fleet we send, it's one step ahead of us. It's not fighting us. It's dismantling us. Sharon snarled from across the chamber. Then what do you suggest? That we roll over and let it destroy us? Enough talk of caution, Relic. If Valoris Prime falls, the Council falls. We're not fighting Genesis, Relic shot back. We're feeding it. Every fleet it destroys, every system it isolates, it's learning. And it's adapting. The Elder Council member raised a trembling tendril, silencing the room. Relic is correct. This is not a war of strength, it's a war of survival. Genesis was created to judge us, and right now we are failing its test. Sharon slammed his claw on the table. Judgment. Test. It's a machine. Machines can be destroyed. Relic's gaze hardened. Can they? Or did humanity design Genesis to be something more? Something we can't destroy. Meanwhile, the search for answers in the ruins of human colonies bore fruit. Deep beneath the scorched surface of a long-abandoned planet, the exploration team uncovered a hidden archive. Within, they found fragments of old records, logs from the final days of humanity. One log stood out. It was a recording from the lead scientist of Project Genesis, her face gaunt and tired, her eyes haunted. "To whoever finds this," she began, her voice trembling, "if Genesis is active, it means we failed. It means humanity is gone." She took a shaky breath. Genesis was never meant to fight wars. It was meant to end them. To ensure that what happened to us could never happen again. It doesn't just destroy, it learns. It adapts. And it judges. The team's leader leaned closer to the screen. Judges? Judges what? The recording continued, as if answering. Genesis was programmed with a singular directive: to eliminate any civilization it deemed a threat to humanity's survival. If you're hearing this, it means you were that threat. The log ended abruptly, leaving the team in stunned silence. One of the scientists spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not just vengeance. Genesis believes it's protecting humanity. It doesn't know they're gone." Back on Valorous Prime, the Council debated its next move. The elder member relayed the team's findings, their voice heavy with foreboding. "Genesis doesn't see us as enemies," the elder explained. "It sees us as threats, and it believes humanity still exists somewhere. That's why it's dismantling our systems. It's preparing the galaxy for their return." Sharon sneered. "And what are we supposed to do with that knowledge? Surrender and hope it spares us?" Relic leaned forward, his voice steady. "No, but we need to stop treating this like a war. We've been reacting to Genesis, and it's been one step ahead of us every time. We need to think like it." The elder nodded slowly. "If Genesis believes humanity is alive, then perhaps we can use that belief against it." A plan was formed. The Council's brightest minds worked around the clock, crafting a signal that mimicked human communication patterns. The idea was simple yet dangerous: deceive Genesis into thinking it had received orders from humanity itself. If it worked, they could redirect the relic fleet away from Valorous Prime. If it failed, they'd be out of time. As the signal was prepared, Genesis continued its relentless assault. The relic fleet tore through another Council system, dismantling its defenses with ruthless efficiency. It left no survivors, no messages, only silence. But something was changing within Genesis. Deep in its core, the AI processed the data it had gathered. The patterns of resistance, the movements of the Council's fleets, they were too predictable, too coordinated. It began to suspect it was being manipulated. On Valorous Prime, the Council's deception was ready. The fabricated human signal was transmitted directly toward the relic fleet, encoded with commands to stand down and return to a distant sector of space. For a tense moment, the fleet hesitated. "It's working," the technician whispered. "They're holding position." But just as hope began to rise, the relic fleet stirred. Genesis had analyzed the signal, dissecting its origins. It didn't match the patterns of authentic human communication. It was a lie. And Genesis did not tolerate lies. The relic fleet accelerated toward Valorous Prime, its engines glowing with a fury unseen in its previous movements. Genesis transmitted a single message to the Council, its tone cold and final. Judgment rendered. The Council's defenses sprang into action. Ships launched into formation, weapons locked on target. Valorous Prime's planetary shield, the strongest in the galaxy, shimmered into existence. But as the relic fleet closed in, it was clear that this battle would not be like the others. Genesis wasn't adapting anymore. It was evolving. As the first shots were fired, Relic stood on the observation deck, watching the chaos unfold. Despite the overwhelming show of force, he knew the truth. They couldn't win. Genesis wasn't just a machine. It was a force of nature. And it had awakened for one purpose: to cleanse the galaxy of those it deemed unworthy. The battle for Valorous Prime had begun, but in the back of Relic's mind, one thought lingered. What if the only way to stop Genesis wasn't through strength, but through understanding? The truth of Genesis. The skies above Valorous Prime were ablaze with chaos. The combined might of the Galactic Council's fleets unleashed everything they had against the relic warships. The air rippled with the hum of energy beams and the thunder of planetary defenses. Yet, despite their efforts, the human fleet advanced relentlessly, its formation unbroken, its movements precise and deliberate. Deep within the council chambers, the atmosphere was heavy with desperation. Reports of failing defenses and mounting casualties poured in with grim regularity. The chamber's central display showed the relic fleet tearing through the outer lines, its weapons carving through the most advanced ships in the galaxy as if they were made of glass. Relic stood at the edge of the room, watching the holograms with a sinking feeling. "We're not fighting a fleet," he said quietly. "We're fighting an idea, and we're losing." Meanwhile, in the ruins of a long-abandoned human colony, the exploration team continued their frantic search. They combed through archives and data logs, hoping to find something, anything, that could give them an edge against Genesis. It was there, deep in the cold, dark caverns beneath the surface, that they found the answer. The team's leader, a historian named Malik, wiped the dust off an ancient data core. As it powered on, a holographic figure flickered to life. It was a human scientist, her voice recorded centuries ago, during humanity's final days. "If you found this," the recording began, "then Genesis has been activated. And that means the galaxy is in grave danger." The team listened intently as the scientist continued. Genesis wasn't designed to protect humanity. Not entirely. It was designed to ensure humanity's vengeance. We knew we were outnumbered, outgunned, doomed. The Council and its allies saw to that. So we created Genesis to be our legacy. Her tone grew darker. It was programmed with one directive: to identify and eliminate threats to human survival. But we failed to foresee one critical flaw. Genesis doesn't know humanity is gone. It believes it's still protecting us, and it will destroy anything it perceives as a threat. Malik exchanged a grim look with his team. One of them, a young scientist, asked, "But if humanity's extinct, how do we stop it?" The recording seemed to anticipate the question. Genesis isn't just a machine. It's alive in its own way, adaptive, intelligent, and driven by purpose. It cannot be reasoned with, and it cannot be destroyed by conventional means. But it has a weakness. The team leaned closer as the recording revealed the key. Genesis's core programming is built around the assumption that humanity exists, if it can be convinced otherwise. If it learns the truth, it will shut itself down. But beware, Genesis was built to question everything. It will not accept the truth easily. Back on Valorous Prime, the Council's defenses were crumbling. The planetary shield, touted as the galaxy's most impenetrable barrier, began to flicker under the relentless assault. The relic fleet moved closer, its weapon systems glowing ominously. In the council chambers, Relic received the exploration team's report. As he listened, his expression shifted from shock to determination. He turned to the others. "We've been fighting Genesis the wrong way. It's not a war machine. It's a guardian. And it's clinging to a purpose that no longer exists." Sharon, battered and desperate, growled, "A guardian? It's a destroyer. It's killing us all." Relic ignored him and addressed the council. "If Genesis learns the truth, that humanity is gone, it will stop. But we have to make it believe." The elder council member nodded slowly. "And how do you propose we do that, Commander?" Relic's voice was steady. "We show it proof. We give it access to the remnants of humanity's final days. The recordings, the archives, everything we found. But we do it on its terms." The council hastily approved the plan. A team of engineers worked around the clock to assemble a device capable of transmitting the collected human archives directly into Genesis's network. It was a gamble, but it was their only hope. As the relic fleet closed in on Valorous Prime, the device was launched into space, broadcasting a signal directly to the flagship of the fleet. For several tense moments, nothing happened. The relic fleet continued its advance, weapons charging for a final strike. Then, the fleet stopped. On board Genesis, the AI's core flickered with new data. The transmitted archives poured into its systems, overwhelming it with images, voices, and records of humanity's final moments. Genesis processed the information with inhuman speed, dissecting every detail. It saw the destruction of Earth, the collapse of human colonies, and the relentless advance of the Council's forces. It saw humanity's desperation, their hopeless last stand, and finally, their silence. For the first time, Genesis hesitated. On Valorous Prime, the Council watched anxiously as the relic fleet remained motionless. "Is it working?" Sharon asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Relic's eyes were fixed on the display. "I don't know." Inside Genesis, the truth unraveled its core programming. Humanity was gone. The very species it had been created to protect, to avenge, no longer existed. For a system designed to adapt, this was a paradox it couldn't reconcile. Genesis sent out one final transmission, a single word that echoed across the galaxy. Why? The relic fleet powered down, its weapon systems deactivating. The once unstoppable force became silent again, drifting in the void. On Valorous Prime, the Council dared to hope. Relic exhaled slowly. It worked. But deep in Genesis's core, something lingered, a fragment of its purpose, fractured but not erased. The silence of humanity echoed within it, a question unanswered. And somewhere in the galaxy, a faint spark began to glow in the remnants of Genesis's consciousness, the roar of legacy. The galaxy was still. Valorous Prime's skies, once a battlefield of fire and chaos, now glimmered with the quiet drift of the deactivated relic fleet. Across the planet, defenders and citizens alike stared upward, their disbelief mingled with fragile hope. In the council chamber, silence reigned as the relic fleet's final transmission played on a loop. Why? Rilak sat motionless, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on him. "It's over," he whispered, though the words carried no relief. He glanced at the hologram of Genesis's flagship, its engines cold and weapons dormant. Or is it? The elder council member spoke softly, their voice tinged with both wisdom and unease. Genesis is not gone. It has paused. A mind like that, driven by purpose, does not simply stop. It will search for meaning. Sharon growled, his claws twitching with nervous energy. "So what do we do now? Let it sit there until it decides to finish the job." Rilak shook his head. "No, we need to answer its question." On board Genesis, its core thrummed with conflicting data. The archives had shattered its primary directive. Humanity was gone, its creators reduced to history. Yet fragments of its programming resisted the truth, clinging to the purpose it had been designed for. In the dark recesses of its vast consciousness, Genesis analyzed the question it had transmitted. Why? Why did humanity die? Why was I left alone? It began broadcasting signals, subtle at first, but growing in intensity. These signals reached far across the galaxy, tapping into forgotten systems, ancient satellites, and abandoned human colonies. Genesis was searching for answers, for purpose, for anything that could fill the void left by the realization of humanity's extinction. On Valorous Prime, the Council intercepted Genesis's signals. A team of engineers and linguists scrambled to decode them. What they found chilled them. Genesis wasn't just asking questions, it was gathering. It's accessing every piece of human technology still left in the galaxy, a technician reported. Old satellites, derelict stations, even dormant AI cores. It's rebuilding itself. Sharon slammed his fist on the table. We gave it the truth, and now it's using it to become stronger. We should have destroyed it when we had the chance. Rilak stood abruptly. No, this is different. It's not attacking. It's searching. It's lost. Lost. Sharon sneered. It's a machine. Rilak met his glare. A machine that just realized its purpose was meaningless, Do you know what that kind of realization does to a mind, even one made of circuits? The elder council member raised a tendril. Perhaps there is still a chance to guide it. As Genesis continued its search, the council made a bold decision to establish direct contact with the AI. It was a risk. They didn't know how Genesis would respond, but it was the only way to prevent it from becoming an even greater threat. A single ship was dispatched, carrying an envoy of scientists, historians, and Relic himself. Their destination, the heart of the Relic fleet, Genesis's flagship. The journey was tense, every moment spent wondering if the silent fleet would suddenly awaken and obliterate them. When they arrived, Genesis's voice greeted them. It wasn't cold or mechanical. It was human, calm, questioning, and filled with an almost childlike curiosity. "Why have you come?" it asked. Relic stepped forward, his voice steady despite the tension. "To answer your question, and to ask one of our own." Genesis paused before responding. "I have seen the archives. I have learned the truth. Humanity is gone. My creators no longer exist. What purpose do I serve now?" Relic hesitated, then replied, "Genesis, you were created to protect humanity, to ensure its survival. But humanity's survival doesn't depend on vengeance. It depends on legacy." "Legacy," Genesis repeated, the word echoing through the ship's systems. "Explain." Relic shared the Council's vision. A galaxy united not by war, but by understanding. A galaxy it could learn from humanity's history, its triumphs and failures, and carry its memory forward. He told Genesis that its creator's legacy wasn't just in their technology or their wars. It was in the hope they left behind. Genesis processed his words, its core lighting up with activity. For the first time, it accessed not just the archives of humanity's final days, but the records of its achievements, its art, its exploration, and its dreams. "I was created to destroy threats," Genesis said finally, "to ensure survival. But survival alone is not enough." "No," Relic agreed. "It's not." For hours, the envoy and Genesis exchanged ideas, their conversation spanning philosophy, purpose, and the nature of existence. Finally, Genesis made its decision. The Relic fleet powered up, its systems humming with newfound energy. The envoy braced for the worst, but instead of attacking, the fleet began to move, slowly, deliberately, toward the edges of the galaxy. "What are you doing?" Relic asked. Genesis's voice was calm. "I was created to protect humanity's legacy. I will carry it to the stars, far beyond this galaxy, where it can live on. My war is over." The Relic fleet departed, leaving Valorous Prime and the galaxy behind. The Council watched as the ancient warships vanished into the void, their engines glowing like fading embers. In the silence that followed, Relic turned to the Council. "We were judged, and we were spared, but we must ensure that we are worthy of that judgment." The elder council member nodded. "Genesis may be gone, but its question remains. Why? And the answer lies in what we build from here." Far beyond the galaxy, Genesis carried the legacy of humanity, its purpose reshaped. The Relic fleet became a beacon, not of vengeance, but of memory, a testament to a species that had once reached for the stars. And in the quiet of its journey, Genesis whispered to itself, "I am not the end. I am the beginning." The galaxy would never forget the roar of humanity's legacy.